It's it was literally like, because the Soviets, like, they had their whole, I mean, that was it. It was the Soviet Union, and so you had this like state-funded sports program, and say what you will about it, and there's definitely some darker sides, even past just the obvious like rampant like steroid and performance enhancing drug use. But they laid out this model, being like, hey, here's a kid. This is what they should be doing from this age to this age. This is what they should be doing from this age to this age, so on and so forth. And so it laid out this model for long-term athletic development, right? And what you see is that in that, they didn't start saying like, hey, play one sport until like their sophomore or junior year of high school, right? And so it's just like, say what you want about the Soviets, man, but I mean, you look at early sports specialization and what that's been leading to in like so many different kids, especially in like our generation and younger. Like by the time these kids get to college, they've been playing softball, travel baseball, travel basketball, and now don't get me started on 7-on-7 BS, right? You have all these kids like focusing on one sport, and they get to college and they're burnt out, like both physically and mentally, and so it's just I really like to tie back into what you're saying, like getting to work with those groups where it's like, dude, it's not a sport, it's just general athletic development. Right. Like what does every athlete need? Let's teach that to these kids. Like, don't even think about putting a bar or anything in their hand. Like, let's just get them moving. I mean, different stuff like obstacle courses and the roles and stuff that we do and stuff. So working at a private facility is pretty fun. Yeah. Because you get exposure to that stuff.
Yeah. A fun conversation I had during the interview, too, is like we were talking about like force plate use. And they're like, yeah, even with our like young kids, like we track stuff on the force plate, but it like barely has anything to do with their program. No. Like we're just using it to track like, are they developing in the right trajectory that we want them to. Right. But then as you get up into like the older groups, college, professional, it's like those force plate metrics become like a heavy part of their programming. Oh, yeah. Because now we're seeing where they're deficient.
For the kids, it's just like, hey, here's a pretty number. Right? And like, beat your friend.
Exactly. It's a fun way to encourage them.
Exactly. Too, yeah. And that's I think that like with tech, that's one of the most valuable things is like, it's obviously it's good to track data and, make decisions based off that data. But at the end of the day, man, like nothing's more fun than beating your friend at some form of competition. Yeah. Right. And so like that's kids get that and kids love that. And I'm sure they have the screen on where you can see the feedback and the graph. And it's like, you don't have to understand that graph to know it's cool to like see your own movement tracked on that thing. Right. But that'll be a fun opportunity getting out. Do you have any family or anything on the East Coast?
No.
Okay. So, sleeping in a car or what?
I'm going to start looking for places coming up. One of my other friends also applied to places in Boston, so nice. I'm kind of waiting to hear if he got any or not.
Okay. From here? Just
from back up in Oregon.
Okay, nice, man.
So if he gets one, we'll probably try to live together. Yeah. But if not, they have a couple places that they said they could like steer me in the direction where like people have lived before.
Paid?
No. But that's how so many of the internships are.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. That was all. I saw this thing. I sent it out to some of my friends from Merrimack and some younger kids. This is, must have been like 4 or 5 months ago at this point. But University of Nebraska put up a paid internship that was like $30,000 a year. Damn. So it was like a paid internship with a salary. And now like that's probably more for the person who's done the internship, done their GA stuff in college, and now it's more of like a professional internship where it's like we're not going to make you full-time staff, but like we're still going to pay you, right? And so those are the people they were probably looking for with that. But yeah, the unpaid internship thing, man, is tough. Yeah. And like that's just a part of the field, unfortunately. Like I don't know. I mean, it's like you think that they would try and make it a little bit easier, but it never is, dude. Yeah. Like I was working when I graduated from UPS in 2019. I was working at UW, GNC, and 24-Hour Fitness because I had to make money somehow. And I was studying for the CSCS during my like GNC shifts. I actually got in trouble for that a couple of times. But I was just like, dude, I'm not here to like push these supplements on these poor people, dude. The amount of times like there's this one guy who came in and he said that like the powder pre-workout was giving him a tummy ache. And I'm just like, okay. He's like, but I still want caffeine. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you try these like caffeine pills? instead, just like a different mode of getting the caffeine in, right? And I set him up with this stack that's gonna like help him get the benefits, but just in a different form, so maybe it doesn't hurt his stomach, right? And my boss comes up, he's like, what'd you just give him? I'm like, what do you mean, what did I just give him? Like, I just talked to him, this is making his stomach hurt, so I'm having him try this stuff out. He's like, no. You try this. And he pulls out another powdered pre-workout. I'm like, dude, that's the same pre-workout that he said his stomach was hurting from. Like, what are you trying to do? He's just like, well, we have this, buy one, get one. And I'm just like, dude, stop. Like, I'm not trying. I don't give a crap about the buy one, get one and like making these deals. This dude comes in, has a tummy ache from pre-workout and just wants to like get that caffeine jitter before his workout. Take a pill, man. Like, I don't care. But that's just the life, man. Yeah. That's just the life of coaching, unfortunately. Hopefully it gets better.
Yeah. I think even, like, the paid gigs, though, it's, like, especially when you're in your undergrad, like, it's such a low amount of payment. Yeah. Like, you might as well just not be getting paid. But it's all an investment, right?
Yeah. Honestly, dude, you guys have it the best out of anywhere I've seen for, like, undergrads. The fact that it's a work study position here to be a strength and conditioning, like, assistant I remember when I called you the first time, you were just like, we're actually not interns, we're student assistants. And I hung up the phone and I was just like, give me a break. I told everybody in the facility, I told my boss, I told the assistant, I told all my other grad fellows, I'm like, get a load of these interns here at PLU, man. They're student assistants. But like, at the end of the day, like since I got here and started working with you guys, I'm like, oh, you know what? That actually is a very apt way to describe what you do. Like, you aren't an unpaid intern. You do stuff, right? That's more than just pass the setup. So yeah, for anyone listening, dude, PLU will pay you if you're a student here. Yeah. If you're not, fill out the volunteer form and we'll make something work.
Want to go ahead and just pause and get an introduction?
Yeah, I guess, we're already minutes into it, but welcome to the AAA podcast, episode 6. We're here today with Zack Losack, our strength and conditioning coach at PLU. If you want to
introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Zack Losack. Like Rowan said, I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at PLU, in charge of all 17 sports here. And yeah, I'm happy to be here talking with these two smart guys. I was telling them before the podcast, I listened to a couple of the clips, and it was cool to hear you guys talk the way that you do. I didn't have anybody to have those conversations with when I was an undergrad. So it's awesome to hear you guys just doing this just because you want to hang out and talk shop and discuss different ideas and all that stuff. I don't know what else is as far as an introduction.
Where you went to school, what you've done, what's led you to this direction and the position right now?
Yeah, so I had typically if you want to get into strength and conditioning, you get your undergrad, right? Get your BS done in kines or exercise science. Usually from that follows 1, 2, sometimes 3 internships, whether they're paid or not. And from that point, once you have a little bit more experience, you can start looking for graduate assistant programs. And the hope is after that, you get your assistant job wherever you want. Then you start climbing the ladder. For me, I started with my first unpaid internship right out of college at UW, working with their football team. Pretty cool experience. Definitely made me not want to do Division I football ever again in my life. Sometimes it was more about the production of everything and getting everyone through the lift in the amount of time that they had, rather than actually focusing on the things that mattered. Like one of my favorite stories is shadowing one of the coaches at, they had level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I was with level 3, and kid does a squat, your classic kind of like corner squat with the knees caving in, and then he comes back up. The coach turns around and like does one of those, like grits his teeth and sucks in and looks at me, and I'm like, what do you want me to do? I was just like, you're the one who has to do something about that. Are we just going to let this go? And he did, and I saw that day after day. And so after that, I was lucky enough, I got my CSCS, and my old head coach at University of Puget Sound brought me on as a head football strength and conditioning coach there. It was really, really cool. My programs absolutely sucked. I can't believe he let me actually do that. But I did. And after that, I learned one of the hardest lessons about being a strength and conditioning coach, that if the budget's gone, you're gone. And so from there, I went to work at Optimum Physical Therapy in Fircrest.
just as a PTA, helping out with the progression and regression of sort of after they do all the manual therapy and stuff that PTs do. I would take them through their exercise protocol. I got lined up with a job for an app called Volt, which is kind of like Team Builder, except they're more for people who don't have a strength and conditioning professional. So they'll do a lot of the actual programming for you and sort of set up your macro cycle and sort of break it down from there, whatever you want the goal to be, and help you implement that. But that was 2020, and signed the employment papers, was getting ready to move to Seattle, be a nice city boy, dude, getting after it, loving life, and the pandemic hit. And so they kind of strung me along for as long as they could until they're like, hey, man, we're decentralizing our office space. We can't bring you on anymore. So I was kind of left with nothing to do. Ended up working at an Amazon warehouse doing like fulfillment. By the way, when Amazon says they care about your packages, they do not. I was like on like if you're an engineer, it's beautiful. Like the way they have this set up, it's like these lasers are always going off, scanning all these packages. Like they're really moving, right? But like sometimes if you've ever like friction gripped two things together and like lifted them up, that would happen to the packages, and you would just hear like an explosion of boxes and like there'd be boxes all over the floor. People were kicking them underneath everything, and just like, so that lasted for probably like a month because I was working the 4 to 8 a.m. shift in Kent. So I had to get in the car, be on the road by 3:30 in the morning just to get there. And then they cut us like 2 hours in because they were just like, oh, well, you know, it's not peak season. We don't need you anymore. Bye. And so I'd be back at my house by like 6:30, just like, the hell else do I do with the rest of my day? But luckily, it's kind of shortly after that, in July-ish, August time, gyms started opening back up, you know, with the masks and the face shields and everything like that. So I took a job up at Emerald City Athletics, this new gym chain that was opening in Seattle. Kind of like a half CrossFit box and a half 24-hour fitness. So they had all the regular stuff you'd see at a commercial gym, but they also had the champions class. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I get to teach Olympic lifts. There's a little bit of sprinting, very CrossFit, right? So like you get exposed to all these things. I'm like, cool, this will, you know, itch the coaching scratch that I have. Tried to make a move to be like, hey, we're telling these people that this champions class is, I mean, dude, name an adaptation, and these guys were saying that this class was going to get it. And I'm like, it is clearly not getting us any of that. And if it is, you're just like milking the newbie gains of all these poor people to say that it works, right? And I came up with a plan, put it all together, had a tie on, I was buttoned up, ready to go, dude. And they're like, no. I was just like, dude, this is like literally how we can plan these classes to get these adaptations that you want. And they're like, no, we have our programming already done for us, and we don't want that. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to be quitting here soon. Was able to find a job as an assistant strength and conditioning coach in Forest City, Iowa at Waldorf University, NAIA school. Super, super fun. I actually really, really loved Iowa because there was nothing to do. And so it was strength and conditioning, trying to dunk. I got up to a lacrosse ball dunking. That was about as far as my dunk journey took me. And the kids there were awesome, man. You know, the town was about 3,000 strong when the school was in session, and school was 1,800 kids. So in the summer, you're talking, you know, like less than 1,500 people in this town. So it's definitely a new experience for me, being from the West Coast my whole life. And at that point, tactical strength and conditioning had started building up in the whole H2F program, which is just a government initiative to try and, like, you know, keep soldiers healthy through things like athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, you know, spiritual guidance, behavioral counseling, mental skills, training, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big unified team around these soldiers, but man, they hated us. And it's a lot better now. I've seen pictures of the new facilities they have built out and stuff, and people are sort of trying to change it, but it was just too slow moving for me. And I'm like, you know, you're talking about changing the Army's PT culture as a bunch of civilians. We can't do that. Like, it's not on us, right? And so a lot of the coaches there who were older were fine with it because they're just like, okay, cool, I can wait 10 years for things to actually be how I want them to be. I'm like, I can't do that. You know, I'm 22, 23. I can't wait this long to do that stuff. And so got a push to go back into grad school. Went to Merrimack College. They had an accelerated program there that lasted a year. That was when I was about 25, so it was really interesting being a GA at 25 with full-time experience under my belt and being with some 22-year-olds who were fresh out and sort of ready to go. And so needless to say, there was a lot of hiccups there in terms of who I am as a coach, and kind of trying to figure out the best way to be who I am while still respecting the mission and the core values and sort of what the coaches were trying to get me to see. So it ended up being a super valuable experience just in a year. And from there I came here. Yeah, it was really, really cool. My girlfriend sent me the job before it was even posted. Got on a Zoom call with Mike around winter break last year. Then he flew me out, did the interview, and here I am. Took the spot from whoever else was interviewing for it. So sorry, guys. But yeah, so sorry. That was a bit of a long-winded explanation, but it's just it just wasn't the typical sort of ABC and who you are as a full-time strength coach path.
Right. I like that, though. I mean, moving around a ton, like, there's probably so many learning experiences you have, and just, like, being, like, I don't know, there were a couple of points there where it sounded like you were kind of fed up with, like, what was happening within organizations. I think that's, like, an important thing to experience, because it's, like, what do you want to do, and not being, like, complacent with what the others are doing around you, and, like, wanting to make good change. Because we need more people like that in this industry. Oh, yeah.
I've been fed up at most of the places that I've been at. But luckily here, I get to do something about it when I'm fed up, right? And, it's very cool to have to be a part of the department that I'm a part of here, because they really do let me do my thing. Man, they really do let me do my thing. My other bosses, if they saw some of the stuff I was programming and doing, they'd just be like, "You're out of your freaking mind." And I'm just like, "Look at the numbers, boys. That's all you gotta see." But yeah, no, it's I always say, and I've told you this to you before, Anthony, but there was nothing more fun than just like applying, like seeing jobs on Instagram, applying for them. Did not matter where it was, and as soon as there was one that wanted me, civics packed up and we're moving. Like we're going to that next thing, right? And so it's like there is chaos about it, but that chaos makes it fun. And like especially early in your career, being willing to take those steps, going to the opposite coast for an internship over the summer, right? Like those are, like you said, Rowan, the character defining moments, the things where you really truly learn, a lot about yourself. Like in Iowa, I was sleeping in a living room. They're like, "Oh yeah, we have a bed for you." And I'm like, "Cool. Well, if they have a bed, there's definitely a room." And I show up to the apartment. Luckily, housing was paid for. Shout out Coach Jason Lobb for literally having like food and housing paid for that job. But I show up and there's just a bed in the living room. I was like, dude, this is sick. And then even at Merrimack, like trying to find rent. I mean, rent is just as atrocious in North Andover, Massachusetts, as it is here in the Pacific Northwest. And so like bumming another living room and just setting up the air mattress and a foam pad and living in, my coworker's living room for the year. But it's, those moments are always super fun. But it's very interesting to be in a more stable position. The job's always chaotic, but like the stability of knowing I'm going to be here for a long time is definitely a different experience for me.
I feel like that's always been something that's been hard for me to explain to people with like the internship thing, because there's jobs, especially in college, where you can just graduate and just like start a position that's not like an assistant or like an internship, whereas like in our position, it's like you kind of need those 3 internships to get that head coaching job or assistant position at places.
Because everyone else has them, and like my brother, industrial engineer, right? Like completely sort of like opposite, not opposite, but like very different fields, right? And, I look at him and, the $70K a year position that he got right out of college, versus me waking up literally the day after graduation to be on the road at 4:15 to UW to work a job that wasn't going to pay me. And so it's one of those things that, and this is beating a dead horse, but if you get into it for the money, man, like this is the wrong thing to do. Like the money will come. Like, don't worry. Like the money, whether you start your own private business or you get involved with physical therapy at a clinical level, or you get to that Power 5 job, there's money to be made. But if money is your sole driver, you're just going to burn out because it's not going to come.
It's not going to come immediately, and like you have to do extra work. I'm a full-time head strength and conditioning coach who also has a coaching Instagram because I want to make money on the side, right? And so it's like that is the sort of nature of the field, and I feel like people who accept that sooner will end up finding happiness in the jobs that you have, because it's at the end of the day, if money is what's going to drive your happiness, then you're going to be pretty unhappy, especially in the beginning of your career. And that's not to say that what strength and conditioning coaches are getting paid now is acceptable. I would say it's barely above livable on average, and that needs to change. But the essence of it has to be passion, and it has to be actually caring for people and being interested in pushing the boundary of human performance in any way that you can. And if that's your foundation, then the money doesn't matter. And you'll just kind of look at your bank account one day and be like, oh, there it is. There's all that money. Sweet. And you learn how to save it. You know what I mean? Like, dude, there's no way you can do that stuff without learning how to freaking save your money, man. Luckily I have pretty supportive parents, and one of their graduation gifts to me was like helping me pay for any continuing education that I want. So like the trip out to Virginia that I took, like they helped me out with that. So I'm definitely lucky and blessed to have them there. But even with supportive parents, you still got a couple of living rooms that you got to work your way through to really get to where you want to be. Yeah.
Speaking of the Instagram, like what's your goal with that?
I don't know really. It's not something that I want to dedicate a lot of time to at this moment. But just looking down the line, 10, 11, 12 years, it's just like if I can build that up and have a little bit of a following, right? If I want to start my own business or something like that, it's just going to make that the easier because I will have done the front loading now. And, right now it's literally just me filming the training that I'm doing and like explaining it. And so like to me, that's a good exercise in just the craft, right? Like you've probably heard about the craft, sharpening your sword. Like to me, looking at my videos, looking at me training and trying to explain the ideas in that short amount of time is a really, really good outlet for practice. And so it's really low investment. Like, there's like you can fill out like an intake form if you're interested in whatever. And like from there, obviously, charging for programs and stuff like that, just a little something on the side, and I'll worry about it more when I actually make enough to have to report it on my taxes. But I think that threshold's like $25,000 or $3,000 or something before you actually have to report it. So once that happens, may look at starting an LLC or something like that, just to sort of keep my money from that in one place and do the right thing and be fiscally responsible and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's just film my training, post it. My friends like it, and then it goes into the ether with the rest of the stuff.
I think that's good though. I'm always surprised on like how few people actually like post to social media. It's just like a fun way to like share your ideas, A, and then B, like also a good way to just like practice explaining things to people.
Yeah.
Because eventually, like you're still gonna, no matter what job you work, you're gonna have to explain it to your clients. And if you can explain it like clearly over social media, chances are you can also explain it clearly to someone sitting in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had talks about this before, Anthony, because for as smart as you are, the part of this process is learning to dumb that down and like understanding that you very may well have to say the wrong word to explain the thing that you're thinking of, right? And so like being okay with sort of like fudging it a little bit just for the sake of their understanding, right? And I've been reading this. I recently got back into reading because at some point, and you guys will reach this at some point, you'll be just saturated. And you'll be like, I've read enough. I've listened to enough. It all sounds the same to me right now. It's in one ear, right out the other. I need to like dump this so that I can make room. And so like, I don't think I read a single thing at Merrimack. And I didn't read a single thing for the first semester here. But like now, starting with J-term, that's when I was like, okay, I dumped it out. I got some space up here. Like it's time for me. And so I've started reading this book by Mladen Jovanovic, who I forget who he took this from, but he mentions him in the book of like classifying training to bridge that gap to team sports. Because he's all about team sports and how the traditional models of periodization, if you look at all of them, it's weightlifting and track and field.
And like you can talk to like, you know, Trey or even Marquis here, who are, you know, track coaches, right? They understand that stuff. Like Trey worked with Anatoly Bondarchuk both as an athlete and as a coach. Bondarchuk is like he's one of the Mount Rushmores. Like he's just that guy, right? And so like you can talk to him as a strength and conditioning coach, and he will understand what you mean when you talk periodization language. But team sports people aren't like that. And a lot of those traditional periodization models don't fit in well with team sports because of the amount of competitions that you have and then the unpredictability of the competitions that you have, right? And so like finding different ways to explain what you're doing. For example, like if we did high rep or long duration or tempo work, I could explain that as armor building, right? This is building our armor plates up right now. Right. That's what we're doing for this. If we're doing max strength work, right? You know, 1 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes, you know, heavy singles, heavy triples, that you could explain as anaconda strength, right? That really, really slow binding strength that eventually sort of peaks out and you're holding that tension, right? Power training, you can make the relation to a bow and arrow and pulling back that bow and letting that arrow snap through, right? That's our more explosive power type training. So it's like whatever you want to frame it as. For me, I stole armor building because we're loots. So like that just makes sense to me, like building it up, right? And so it's customizable. And team sports are one of those sports where like they don't necessarily, the coaches don't dig in as much to the training literature because it doesn't apply to them. They're reading this periodization model and it's talking about periodizing for a sprinter or a thrower. They're like, I don't care. Like, I don't do sprints or throws coaching. Like, why does that matter to me? And so, yeah, so Jovanovich's stuff has been really, really cool because he introduced this idea of like agile periodization. And I think you guys are familiar with like the yearly macro cycle model and then like a mesocycle, you know? So you have kind of year, month to month, week to week, day to day, right? And traditionally, you would plan out the year, break it down to the months, to the weeks, and to the days. Jovanovich is exactly the opposite, where he just kind of says no to the yearly training plan. What do these people need right now? What do they need right now that I can immediately implement to have an effect? And then from there, at the end of each week, reanalyzing where you're at and either continuing with the current process or switching it up as needed. And so I first got exposed to that at Tactical, and it was a really, really good model for that population because you don't know what these guys are going to do, man. One of their NCOs might get pissed off and they're doing a 12-mile road march with 75 pounds on their back. It's just like, well, that wasn't in the training plan. You know what I mean? Or, you know, God forbid they get deployed. You can't. There's not a lot of things you can do to train to be in a firefight. You know what I mean? And so like these sort of, we would start out with these like, okay, here's our, you know, we're not going to be able to do a year, so let's just do 6 months. And 2 weeks into that 6-month plan, gone to shit. They're doing something else that completely screws up the plan. Now we have to replan it until we got to the point where like, let's just do this, man. Like week to week. What's a goal that you want during the week? Let's assess what we got going on next week and go from there. So yeah, it's being able to dumb down, and not even dumb down, just like creating a different framework to like think about the thing you're trying to express to a coach or to a client or anybody is a super helpful practice that something like having an Instagram and just filming your own videos and doing a voiceover helps with, because you only got like a minute 15 if you're really trying to get that reach and that engagement. Not a lot of time for long form stuff anymore.
Maybe even less now with the brain rot that's out there. You have like 15 seconds now.
I know. That's why I always start the videos with like my handstands and my somersaults, because I'm like, this is going to get them locked in. This is going to be like how this thick boy is doing these somersaults and handstands. I like it. What else is he doing? Yeah, man, that's so tough, dude. Because that bleeds over into coaching too. I don't have a lot of time to explain to you guys what I'm doing. And even sometimes when I feel like it's a short one and then I see what's going on, I'm like, I need to shorten that up even more. You know what I mean? And it's a constant process that you got to work through. But yeah, that attention span is getting shorter and shorter every day.
Yeah. Sticking with like that social media stuff, do you get like annoyed by the people on social media that are just like posting dumb stuff just to get views? And like, I don't know how to explain
we talking
it.
Seedman right now, dude? We talking Dr. Joel Seedman? Vibration plate cleans right now? Is that what we're talking?
We're talking a lot of people, but
I posted this on my story the other day. It was like this guy, and he was basically reenacting things that people on TikTok have said not to eat. So he's like making eggs, and it's like, don't eat eggs. And he's like, puts the eggs away, and it's like, takes out oatmeal, don't eat oatmeal.
Yeah.
Like all these different people on TikTok and Instagram, and then it was like, don't eat fruit. Like, what am I supposed to eat at this point?
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, I don't know. There's just so much stuff.
You sound like an old man. I don't know what's going on with these days, dude. No, it's like, the thing about it, man, is like, the more that I've read and the more I've tried things out and just the more experience I've gained, like, dude, some of that dumb stuff is really good. Like some of that dumb stuff, and like, don't get me wrong, there's dumb stuff where you're like, nah. Like I think this video went viral, and not to pick on Seedman here, but that's probably one guy where I'm like, okay, most of what you're doing is stupid. But he has a PhD and I don't, so what do I know? But he was doing these rows on a safety bar. You know, the cane bird has the two handles, right? And he's like, he has the handle and the bar's in the rack, and he's like, like doing a row on a safety bar, and he has 5-6 plates or whatever on the side, and it's just like, dude, what? Yeah, no shit. Like, what the hell? Like, what do you like? Of course, like, just because you're like twitching like that doesn't mean it's hard. And this one guy, he's actually a former football player at Merrimack, like remixed it. You see Seedman doing the safety squat bar row, and you see him, he has all these weights on. He's just like, this isn't doing anything. And he's just like shaking the bar. And so like, there's certainly people, but that's what experience gives you, is it gives you the perspective and framework necessary to like distill that information and make your own opinion on it. And like, at the end of the day, like where it is now, like I tried to program some, and this is by no means a diss on Merrimack. I truly loved and respect all the coaches who are there. But dude, trying to do something like contact training, like you've seen the lateral line fights that we do, hip to hip, fight for a line, no go. Absolutely no go, because it's too high of a risk of injury. If I wanted to do somersaults with them, absolutely not. How are you going to coach that? Why are you doing that? And so it's like, there are a lot of things that are actually really good, but get shoved to the side as dumb, simply because it doesn't fit within the sort of rigid framework of American strength and conditioning, or American physical therapy, right? Like this, to understand what stuff from sort of outside the box is really meaningful, you do have to understand what the box is. Like, all these people who are like, oh, I'm out of the box, my red pill moment. It's just like, dude, don't get it twisted. Like the Austin Yokums, those guys who are doing like wall run plyos where he's having his athletes jump onto a wall and then jump off. Like, he is very aware of what's inside the box, right? And like most of his strength training stuff is conjugate. So like he is using a well-researched, well-founded periodization scheme when it comes to his strength work, but because he understands the box and what's inside of it, he has the ability to intelligently go outside of that, right? But if you don't know the box and you don't know what's going on in it, things are just going to seem stupid, right? Or things may not just seem right to you. And so the better you get at understanding that box, the better you actually get about getting outside of it. It's just a matter of what decision, like which exercise is going to be your first step outside of that box. But with the dumb Instagram stuff, man, it's just like, I don't know. You know what the problem really is? It's because strength and conditioning coaches aren't interesting enough. Like, how many more sleep infographics or creatine infographics, like, do we have to get shoved down our throats before we're just like, well, this isn't working, Or, how many just, like, beige vanilla posts about this, that, or the other that have been done so many times, right? And so, like, that's why you see the strength and conditioning coaches that have the biggest following are the ones who are making memes, right? And the ones who are making what they'll call, like, low IQ content, because it's like, that is what is getting people to their page,
right? And so it's like you get them with the short form, you get them with the memes, the low IQ, and then they stay for the long form, right? And so on that note, Rowan, it's like you kind of have to play the idiot's game to get that attention first, but you know you're not an idiot. And so you know that like by somebody following you, they are going to get better. That's the hope, at least, right? And so like a lot of these dumb posts are very annoying because like especially if it's a dumb post and you go look at their profile and it's more dumb stuff, you're like, great, this person has 100,000 followers. That's going to be good for everybody, right? But you know, you can't help it, right? Yeah. And it's just kind of it's more entertainment. And then take the dumb thing, make a meme off it. And that would be my response to the dumb things on Instagram is make a meme out of it and watch your follower count go up and people stay for your content now. Because like, you know, if it's dumb and then they don't know it's dumb, but then they see your post and it's making fun of how dumb it is, they're like, oh man, I was an idiot. This guy knows what he's talking about. Let me hop on over here, dude, and get after it.
Speaking of like being, this kind of goes into it, but like a jack of all trades, you probably get athletes who come up to you and ask you questions about things they see on social media.
Oh yeah.
And like I feel like from experience, when you come up with that question, it's like you want to hear the answer that was in the post. So like, you know, there's the whole like seed oil thing, and people will just probably come up with things that are like so micro compared to like what you need. How do you like address that?
Like somebody coming in and being like, I saw this on Instagram, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'll be like, well, what do you think? So immediately turn the question around on them, right? Because one, like, of course I can sit here and tell you my thoughts, but like my objective as a coach is to educate you, especially when it's like a question, right? And so like part of that education is like, well, tell me what you think about it. Like what inspired you to come ask me, right? And from that description will usually the conversation of like, there may be some truth here, there's maybe not so much truth, right? Sort of wherever the conversation leads, it's like immediately turn it back on them. And like if somebody came in, it's like, oh, I saw this exercise on Instagram, show me, like, let me see it, right? And like there have been stuff that you've showed me, Rowan, that have been like, awesome, I love it, I'm in, right? And if it truly is something that's dumb, right, or that you're like, oh my God, give me a break with this stuff, right? Like try to break it down to like, try to think about why they like it and like what are the elements that they actually appreciate about it, and then explain how you're incorporating those elements into the current training program that you're running, right? And unfortunately, I can't think of a dumb exercise right now, but it's just like if you understand human movement, you can be like, okay, well, like, you know, I see you're in like a hinge position there. You're like dropping a ball over here and like looking to the left. It's like, okay, cool. Like you like that probably because it's burning your hamstring a little bit. You like it because you're, you know, dropping something and having to catch it, right? And then like you're looking out of your periphery. It's like, all right, cool. Well, we do peripheral training, right? We also do hinges, you know, and we also do drop catches. So it's just like make it a kind of a class. Just be like, tell me what you think about it. And then from that, the discussion will eventually sort of flow from that. And it's not about getting them to realize it's dumb. It's more about just hearing them out. Because like that's at the end of it. They just want to hear. They just want to, like, people just want to know, right? And so like the worst thing I could do as a coach is just be like, give me a break. What do you mean that exercise? Like, God, it's so dumb. I hate Instagram, right? Because then the kid's never going to want to ask me a question ever again. Right. And that's what matters more, is that like I would rather have somebody who sees a dumb exercise on Instagram ask me about a dumb exercise every single week for the rest of my coaching career than them asking me once, me telling them they're dumb for thinking about that, and then they never come and ask me a question again. And I've lost all trust there. It can get a little annoying, though. I'm not going to lie. So it's a little frustrating sometimes. But, dude, sometimes I'll throw them in. I don't care. But if it works, you know. And if it's going to get engagement, that's the most important variable in a program, is engagement and adherence. So like change up the single leg RDL to make it more fun for them. Add a pulse at the bottom, make it a drop catch, you know, have them look all directions when they're doing it. Like, you know, is that going to help them? No, but like if it gets them to do a single leg RDL better, hell yeah, let's rock and roll, you know?
I guess like you're kind of saying like usually athletes are, once they hear that explanation from you, it's like they're not going to like argue or like think like, oh, you have, less followers than this person, less knowledge, and like kind of go against you. Have you found that or experienced people that like aren't athletes but more like educated and like professionals in this field that kind of are like that, where you'll explain something to them that they might like disagree with, or you might be having a conversation and then they just kind of dismiss it because maybe you're not as high of like education as them, or you don't have as much of a following, or
I think that I experienced most of that, and this was for a net positive rather than just somebody always like tearing down my ideas that I had. But at Merrimack, we had to get all of our programs reviewed, and so before it hit the floor, like you had to have it reviewed by one of the coaches. And so having that process of them really just being like, no, yes, no, yes, no, and you could ask why, and sometimes the why would be insightful. It'd be, okay, good, this is a good why. Like, thank you for explaining it to me. Totally get it. Like, I'll place it here in the progression instead of having it outright, in the first phase here. But sometimes it was just no, because that's not how we do things. And those points are really, really frustrating. But part of being a successful coach is adapting to the environment and the culture that you are a part of and promoting that in everything you do. And for as frustrating as it was less frustrating than getting yelled at by my bosses, right? And it was less stress than going through that process. Oh God, I remember. So there's this guy, Mike Boyle, who is freaking awesome. Definitely an American strength and conditioning legend. But he's moved away from back squats, and he has now for decades. None of his athletes do barbell back squats. Cool. That's your MO. Tons of different ways to skin the cat. And both of the guys who worked at Merrimack were both Boyle disciples. Like, they both interned under Boyle. Like, Boyle is, especially in the Northeast, you're going to hear a lot about Boyle when you go to the Northeast, man. He is the guy there for good reason as well. But I programmed barbell back squats for field hockey because I'm like, we're in the off season. They play a sport where they are very, very low to the ground and in a heavily flexed position for the majority of the game. I think that there's benefit to direct loading of the spine in the off season to help them manage that, right? And that was my reasoning. And he was just like, okay, go ahead. And the first session, because everyone was barbell back squatting, freshman up to senior, I didn't give a shit. Everyone was barbell back squatting. And the like committee of full-time coaches that were watching me during this said like hawks, dude. Like, my boss stopped his workout, took out his earplug, turned from the bike and was staring at me. Vaughn was in the corner, cross-armed looking at me, and they were all just waiting for something to go wrong. They're all waiting for that moment. And that frustrated me a little bit because I'm just like, why are you waiting like for me to fail? Like, do you not trust me to do this? I've been doing this for a while. This is my first time coaching a barbell back squat, and I've coached it to, my grandma. So if my grandma can do it, these Division I field hockey players can do it as well, right? And so it is frustrating, I think, especially as strength and conditioning coaches. There's a lot of infighting about like what's right and what's wrong. And that's tough because it's just like we're all kind of the same here, to a degree. Obviously, some people have a lot more experience than others. But then even trying to communicate strength and conditioning to coaches and faculty, right? Like, the track coach at Merrimack wanted me to do cleans. I wasn't planning on doing cleans that year. I was going to do weighted jumps because that was something new to me. Wanted to try it out with them for the first time. Not anti-clean, just like, hey, this weighted jump thing seems pretty cool. Like, is it truly a good substitute? I wanted to find out. And he was just like, no, they have to be cleaning. And, I go into the explanation as best as I could of the differences, but it's just, you could just hear it just banging off. It wasn't even going in one ear out the other. It just wasn't even making it into the ear, right? And like, that's frustrating. And then even talking with like trying to talk S&C with the faculty at my own school, like, it was tough because like they're not PhDs in strength and conditioning. Like, there's a reason that this is a field in of itself. Like, an exercise physiologist is not going to be able to talk S&C with you in S&C language.
You have to know, and that's the beauty of strength and conditioning, is that you should know a little bit of physiology language. You should know a little bit of neuroscience language. You should know a little bit of biomechanist language, right? You should know a little bit of rehab and athletic training and physical therapist language, right? You kind of, the field, even though you may focus on 1 to 3 sports, is a jack of all trades field. You have to have understandings of all of these things because it takes that to become a complete strength and conditioning professional. But, you know, I couldn't go to any of my professors to ask them what was the best way to train to get strength, right? I mean, Dr. Gary McCall could tell me about the growth hormone response after like a high volume set of, you know, leg extensions or something like that. Or he could tell me all about that, you know. Dr. Jung, she could tell me what happens when you snap, or when you cut a rat spine in a certain position, right? Like, you know, and Dr. Pohl could tell me about how your foot moves in the shoe, or like what a golf swing looks like on a force plate. But from that, there's no practical, right? And so like, unless you have a PhD of some strength and conditioning, exercise, sports science, like those are the people that you can talk to and sort of have those conversations with. But a lot of the disagreements from everyone else just comes from a matter of not having the same language. And so it's kind of incumbent upon you as a performance professional to learn to speak the language of the people that you are trying to convince or communicate with. Like, if I want to change the facility, I need to learn how to speak Andy and Mike's language, right? Like, I can't say, hey, I want to turf out Memorial Gymnasium because why? Like, because I shouldn't have to explain. Every other sport coach, ATC, and everyone will know why I want to turf out Memorial. But for them, it's like I have to talk in terms of liability. I have to talk in terms of like cost benefit analysis, right? And so the important thing is learning to speak the language, and that goes back to the like making up those little catch-alls for the type of training you're doing, the armor building or the anaconda strength, right? It's like you have to put your words into someone else's language. And unfortunately, that responsibility tends to fall on the performance professional 99% of the time. Is you're always trying to communicate what you want to do and convince people that what you're doing is right. And it usually is never the other way around, where, you know, the sport coach isn't asking me, you know, for my opinion on something. They're just kind of like, we're going to do this. What are you going to do to modify what you're doing for that? That's part of the fun too, is you just kind of get to sit back and be like, there goes so-and-so coach again, you know, giving me crap for this or doing this again with their athletes. Now I got to, you know, do spinal hygiene for 30 minutes just to just to mitigate all this trauma that they built up at practice.
I want to pivot a little bit and just, you mentioned earlier you're now in charge of 17 sports.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about like the learning curve behind that? Because I'm sure this is maybe the highest load of different sports you've ever had at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe how you've tackled that and then what you've learned in the last 8 months.
Oh, man. Trying to put the sports into different buckets. I'm starting to move away from the bucket analogy. I think it's used a lot in strength and conditioning, but like truly looking at all the sports and being like, what kind of sport are you? Are you like, for example, like a field sport, right? Like to me, honestly, field and court sports, you kind of train them the same. Like football is a repeat sprint ability sport, just like soccer is, which is crazy to think because it's two very, very different games, right? It's just that football, their repeat sprint is met with complete rest, where soccer's repeat sprint is met with jogs or walks, right? And so it's like I tried to put these different sports into different categories, make a program based on that category, and then individualize where necessary for those sports. So that helped me out a lot. Also being, you know, with some of these, especially these individual sports, you don't need too many different things like this early. Like golf and cross country can do the same lift and be pretty dang good, right? The only difference is golf is maybe doing some med ball throws with their stuff, right? Where cross country isn't, you know? But basically making a sort of grand program that I know fits for everybody and has all the different considerations I want to take into account, and then based on the category of sport, delineate, and then based on the actual specific sport, delineate a little bit more than we need to. So it was a little bit tough in the beginning, but luckily I had one person reach out to me who's full-time on JBLM, Coach Bennett Candlin, and he's been taking care of basketball, both basketballs and now sprints and jumps, where he's taking care of volleyball in the fall. So 2 programs three technically off my plate. Awesome, right? Anthony here has been approved to write the programs for cross-country golf and rowing. 3 programs off my plate, right? And then we just got a new volunteer intern, Coach Pratt, and he's going to be assisting me with a little bit, but he'll eventually get a couple of teams, right? And so knowing that this is somewhat of an impossible job for one person and just desperately looking for help wherever I could have it. Like, the programs are going to get done. Like, there were some days with cross country where they walked in, they're like, Coach, where's the program? I'm like, oh, copy paste. My bad. Forgot to copy paste it on Team Builder, right? But like at the end of the day, I wouldn't really be able to do my job and maintain my sanity if it weren't for the help from the volunteer interns and the help from some of the student assistants like Anthony. And that set me up now to where, like, you're not going to be here forever. So, like, I have to train the people to be you. I have to train, because now the expectation is that by your senior year, you should be able to program for your own teams, right? And, like, I'm never going to load them with a football or, like, even a baseball or a softball. Like, those bigger team sports, I'm never going to load that onto a student assistant. But the smaller sports that need a little bit more basic and they kind of need the fundamentals, that is something that is very appropriate for somebody in that position, right? And so the plan is to train up whoever the paid assistants are to take on that load whenever the one who is in charge leaves. And that's really been the biggest sort of key to managing all these teams, is finding help. And luckily I had 2 people reach out to me who liked what we're doing here and wanted to work with me. So we'll see how long those interns stay around. Yeah.
Hopefully a while for your sake, or hopefully there's just a big pool of them.
Yeah, exactly. The more people that get, sort of funneled out of here with, PLU strength and conditioning on their resume and the Lute strength and conditioning shirts that they have on, the more that interest will naturally build. And, even if I, have to hit up the Strength Coach Job Network on Instagram and have them post something, it's just a matter of, like, there's always going to be kids who need internships. There's always going to be this pool of people who understand that this is what it takes to have this as a full-time job. And as long as that's around, the unpaid internships will be easy. Now, if that goes away and we have to start paying interns all of a sudden, I'm going to be in some deep waters. We'll figure it out from there. But yeah, man, it's definitely been a ride trying to coach all of these, or program for all these teams. It's mostly weekends. I'll dedicate some time on weekend mornings. That's kind of how I'll start my day, because luckily for me, sleeping in means I wake up at like 7 or 8 o'clock. So I still have quite a bit of time during the weekends to do that stuff when I need to.
With like those lower training age sports, or just, I guess, in general, younger athletes who want to do like very sports specific stuff, when like that general prep is more of what they need, like, how do you articulate that to them? Because obviously they want to do the sports specific stuff because it looks like their sport, it looks cool, it looks fun, but what they really need and what they're going to get more benefit off of is the general prep stuff. Like, I've had someone like show me an overhead squat, and it's like, if we tried to overhead squat you, you'd get concussed because you dropped the barbell on your head. Like, you can't overhead squat right now.
I really don't know who wants to be doing overhead squats. The last time I even used overhead squats is as like an assessment tool. Yeah. And I don't even do that anymore. But for like, for those people who it's like low training age and stuff, I mean, there are a lot of routes you can go. One, I think it'd be super easy. Let's say it's a golfer, for example, because that's someone who I could imagine be like, Coach, we don't do, a lot of rotational stuff. We're just kind of doing, your squat, push, pull, hinge type of deal for however, 3x5 or whatever. For them, I would be like, one, I would go through my Instagram to find the coach that I follow who works with professional golfers and show them a few videos and be like, hey, here's a pro. Like, there's a back squat. There's a staggered stance RDL, right? There's a split squat, right? And so, like, finding content from the people they're trying to emulate, I think works really, really well. Besides that, I mean, really my answer is, like, just throw it in there. Like, throw in a side twist pass and, like, make it progress to the sport-specific med ball swing that they saw, right? And then you can be like, hey, like, yes, we will get there, but first, let's do this, right? So now they have a little something to hold on to be like, okay, this is getting me to that specific point. And if that's all they care about, awesome. They're going to do the work anyway. They're going to go up 5 pounds week to week, whatever it is, right? And so I think that, like, there's a lot of time. Like, I know sometimes an hour doesn't seem like a lot, but there's certainly enough time to, like, sort of feed that. Like, it all just depends on how you explain your exercise. You can explain any exercise to be sports specific, right? Yeah. And so, like, feeding them that a little bit and then just dedicating the rest of your time to the actual work that matters. It's just a time game. So if you can sacrifice 10 minutes of doing something that's maybe more sports specific, cool. The rest of the 50 minutes is going to be the work that they need, right? And so you're still at sort of a net positive there in terms of, like, balancing what they need with some cool thing that they want to do because it's specific to their sport, right? And then you can always just say, hey, like, feel free, like, do it on your off time. Okay, if you want to come in, you want to get your specific work, like, go for it, man. Because at the end of the day, dude, if it makes you feel good, whether, like, mentally it, like, boosts your confidence because you're like, I am doing something specific for my sport, or it just makes your shoulders or your hips or your knees feel good, keep doing it. Okay, keep doing it, right? Like, if you do it at home, do it at home. If you're going to come in, because we only train 3 times a week in the off season, 2 times a week in the in season. And I know you guys like to come into the gym more than those days, right? So it's like, on those days, do the stuff that makes you feel good, right? Whether it's mentally because you're doing the specific thing or physically because it's just some different mobility exercise that we just didn't have the time to program or we just didn't see it in that way, right? So I think it's a pretty easy answer because most of the time you just let them do it, and then say, ooh, I'm going to steal that. Now they feel good, right? Yeah. Now they've contributed to the program, and that's not, fluff. They actually have. You know what I mean? So, that's one of those strength and conditioning coach things that you're always going to do. Just like you're always going to tell everybody how many sets and reps there are at every exercise. Again, no matter what the day is, you're always gonna have to answer that question.
Obviously we have, like, a pretty, I mean, it's not a bad weight room, but it's small for the amount of people we have in there sometimes. Yeah. Have there been any moments where, like, there's been something you programmed that you really like, but you've had to, like, stray away from it because it just doesn't fit with, like, the cycle of the hour-long workout?
Usually I'll cycle that out before it actually makes it onto the floor. Like, I'll program it out on paper, and then as I'm putting it into Team Builder, I'll be like, actually, like, no. And I tend to think of any training space as a grid. And so to me, we have 3 major grids. One of the grids is kind of a half grid because we only have access to it during certain parts of the year. But at Names, we have Foss Field is one grid. We have the weight room floor with the platforms and everything like that. That's another grid. Then we have Memorial Gym. That's another grid. And so drawing out that grid whenever I program something new helps me to see where it flows. And so most of the time, I'll hammer that aspect out before I even give it to you in Team Builder and expect you to do it on the floor. And sometimes exercise is worth the traffic, like we just started doing that drop step cable rotation. Like, that's a high traffic exercise, but I like it. I like it. And I think you guys like it too. If anything, it's just a nice, powerful rotation, which you guys are all about. So, I think pre-planning it makes that a little bit easier. And, like, There may have been a couple of things that I just can't remember that I've sort of had to dump and just replace with something else. A lot of the times it's exercises that I know are really good, but honestly look really weird, and that makes people not want to do it. And so I have to like think of a different exercise to do that sort of gets the same thing, like tabletop planks are one of them. Like, and if you think of like a frog stretch, where like, you know, your knees, shins, and heels are on the floor kind of behind you, and you're like stretching back into your hips. There's a plank variation from that called a tabletop plank that I really, really like, because you're able to get sort of like, first you get scapular protraction, and then you get your rib cage and core moving in like that. But like, you know, you're kind of like splayed out like that on the floor, and it's just like you're just not gonna get the buy-in that you want. It's gonna become more of a comedy show than an actual lift, which is like, I really do love the tabletop plank, but I have not been able to program it, because I remember I tried it with rowing. They're like, "Coach, this feels really weird." I'm like, "Yeah, you guys are right. Front plank." I'm like, "Front plank it out. It's all good. Front plank it out and suck in your belly button. You're good to go."
That's funny. I think that comedy show is like a good thing, like a really true thing too. Because like when we have our 40 baseball dudes in the weight room, like it gets off. We get off focus so easily, and dudes are, it's just messing around. But yeah.
But that's good though. Like you want that in a training session, right? And like it's there's so many layers to like having a good training session, and like one of them is the social layer. And like, I've gotten questions about like, well, what's wrong with letting like the general campus in during some of these lifting times, and it's like, well, on one layer the availability is just not there. Like in all honesty, it's just like it's not going to be good for anybody, because we have so many kids that we're trying to get through at one time versus you want to just come in and have a rack. Dude, there are no racks, right? But then also it's like the social layer of it. Like I want you guys to feel comfortable being who you guys are, like in the locker room. Like that's the aura and the comfortability I want every single team to have, which is why it's important not only to have those separate sessions, but to try and keep them as isolated as possible, right? Because you guys act different than you did when softball was lifting with you. Right? Softball acts different than when you were lifting with them, right? And so like there's the first layer of like, if it's just student athletes in there, that's good, right? And that's going to be a fun atmosphere. But when it's just your team in there, that's even more fun, because it's just your guys and you can be yourself. You don't have to have your head on a swivel to look around and be like, oh, this, that, or the other. I hope they don't get offended, or they don't mishear or misunderstand what I said, right? And you can't have that. You can't have that when you're doing too much mixing. It's just like, I want to give everyone the opportunity to be their authentic selves, and like the laughter is great. Like especially when it's a new exercise, like I remember when we were doing the tri position like medicine ball thing. That was a comedy show. that first day we did that was definitely a comedy show. You know what I mean? Or the bear position pushes, right? That stuff always ends up being a comedy show. But that's good, because you guys are laughing, but you're also like trying to like roll each other over, which is the whole point of it, right? But yeah, if I can't stand the coaches who want that militaristic, we do this and that, and like no talking during stretchies. It's just
no rest.
Yeah, it's just like, dude, like let the kids hang out, man. Like let them play the music they want. Like let them joke around. Like let them enjoy their time in here. Like it's not that serious. It's never that serious, dude. Like you have some of the best athletes in the world who don't give any sort of care to training, and they're amazing athletes. So like I think those coaches who tend to yell and are strict and like the more militaristic authoritative, they're trying to make their job more important than it is. Like, dude, I'm just support staff. I'm just here to support you guys. That's all. There's hundreds, thousands of ways that I can do it. Whichever one has you guys doing the work and enjoying yourselves, that's the work that we're going to do. And there's going to be times where it's hard. But most of the time, if it's hard and then after you're like, that was good hard, we're good to go, So I think that like a coach that doesn't take themselves seriously in that regard is going to have a more enjoyable weight room. And if you have a more enjoyable weight room, you're going to get a better outcome. Be it with the ultimate outcome being student athlete well-being. Like aside from KPIs and all that kind of stuff that we can measure and we can track, student well-being is the number one KPI that I want to track. And it's hard to track that sometimes, but you guys being able to enjoy yourselves and me seeing you guys laughing and stuff, that to me is a really good indicator that like we're having good training right now because you guys are enjoying it and you're able to be yourselves during it.
Yeah. Even like speaking from experience, even like last week when women's basketball was by themselves, I was like, there's some people where I was like, I've never heard you talk before because they're just like with themselves. And I've been like looking at the programs lately, and the question I ask myself is like, how can I make this a partner exercise?
Oh yeah,
because that just makes it like it doesn't even have to be like a competition thing. It could just be like how, like for example, when I went to England, I saw they were doing partner banded dead bugs. So one partner holds it on this side, the other partner holds it on that side.
Yeah,
and I was like, something so simple that you could just like make with a partner, and it seems like it just makes the workout that much better, even if you're sacrificing, a little bit of work.
Yeah, exactly, dude. No, there's always a way to involve somebody else, and I think that especially as you like, if you want to get kind of S&C scientific about it, like the closer you get to the in season, the more partner work I would put in, right? Because like that's is going to drive that sort of culture that you want to have, right? I remember like when we would play games with baseball and softball, I would try my best to go like boy girl, or like make your own teams, and it's just like it's just one of those weird things where it's just like, I know nobody is like misogynist or sexist or anything, but they just kind of like, the softball's going to go with softball, baseball's going to go with baseball, right? Like I had 2 ropes. I completely stole your warm-up this morning for men's and women's basketball. And I had 2 ropes set up on either side. Men's basketball all went to one rope, right? Women's basketball all went to the other rope. And it's just like, come on, man. Let's mix a little bit here, And you even see it like, with the rack setup, like softball had their own racks and they were all in one nice cluster, and you guys were all in one nice cluster. It wasn't even like obviously much harder to like mix the genders in at a rack when you're doing something like a back squat, right? But the fact that it was literally like baseball, softball. Like it wasn't, baseball, softball. It was just 2 different sections that just clicked together, But yeah, the partner stuff, man, the more closer you get to the season, that's when I really like to try and start digging into it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it changes the exercise. It is almost a way to add variability without actually changing anything. Right. And like variability is one of those principles of progression that you need to have to prevent staleness. And so it's just like, well, I really like a dead bug. I don't want to get rid of it. Just like you said, all right, make it a partner dead bug. You know what I mean? Or even like with row, we had the staggered stance RDL. I was like, just put a foam roller between you and the other girl doing it. And so now they have to like hold the foam roller with both their knees as they're doing the RDL. Like, is that actually going to have a benefit? I mean, maybe the adductor in some way, I don't know. But like, it's just funny to watch them do. Honestly, sometimes I program things so that I can like have a chuckle at watching you all do them, where I'm just like, oh man, that's so silly, dude. That's so silly. It's because I do silly shit in my programming too. So I sometimes want to make you guys do silly shit so I can sit there and be like, good, yes. Yeah. We're going to make a bunch of people who talk to themselves and do handstands during lifts. This is good, gentlemen. This is good.
Really quickly, just going back to like that well-being piece, like I think that's a really big part of it, because I think sometimes for a student athlete, like the weight room is the only place where you can have like some sort of competition or performance without like the pressure on you.
Yeah.
Like as long as like nobody really cares if you like fail a lift or if you don't have it all that day. Yeah. But like when you're in your sport or in school, like those actually matter a lot more. Yeah. So I think it's nice having that like camaraderie in the weight room and a bunch of other guys. We can just like go hang out with them, have like a loose competition, but like almost none of the pressures of performing.
Exactly. No, it's a huge tool to have. Like any like weight room culture is so important and can be so empowering too. Like even from like developing leadership, you know what I mean? Like asking someone to come up and demo, like, and I don't know, like it could be like the third string catcher or something like that. But I asked them to demo. Now they have that, like, I did it, right? And like, coach trusts me. This coach trusts me to do this thing right, and I did it right, you know? And that's awesome. And that's a really, really good thing. And I think I try to say this to every team, like when we first start, like, I don't care if you're all-star, all-American, first string, second string, third string, you're the water person. I don't care. Like, if you're on this team and you're in here with me, you're going to get my help. If you need my help, you need my support, you can ask me, and I'm going to be here for you. And I'm going to make sure that I can do everything to give you what you need in here. And I don't care if you never, and I tell this to all the recruits, like, I don't care about whether your KPIs go up. Like, yeah, I'm going to look at it. If no one's KPIs are going up, obviously I'm going to look at the program and what we're doing and be like, okay, wait, hold on. Something's going on here, right? But like, at the end of the day, were you able for 4 years to play the sport to the best of your ability? If the answer is yes, I did my job. I did my job. And your counter movement jump score may have only gone up 2 inches in that 4 years. And your back squat may have only gotten, 30 pounds heavier in that 4 years. But did you play, right? Were you on the team? Did you do the softball, the baseball, the football, whatever your sport is? Did you do that for 4 years and maintain your health? Sick. That's awesome. And like, that really is the main focus of my job, is to make sure that you can play your sport to the best of your ability for 4 years or however long you decide to stay with that program. And it is cool. And that's why I like my job, and I'm not a sport coach, because I don't have to make decisions about who's starting or cutting people. There was one time I did have to make a decision about cutting, and it still haunts me to this day. And so I was like, yeah, sport coaching, like, not for me, dude. But like, on that, it's just like, that's how pivotal you can be as a performance professional, as part of an organization. Like, people will trust you with things that you maybe that you maybe shouldn't be trusted with, right? Or they will come to you for advice when it's just like, dude, you're so separated. Like, my boss at Merrimack, like, the president and the dean are talking to him about like moves that they should make. The athletic director is talking to him about different moves that they should make and different things departmentally that they should do. He's just strength and conditioning, right? But it's like, if you do your job right as a strength and conditioning or performance professional, you will be that pillar of trust for people. You will be seen as this sort of like separate entity that isn't like all knowing, but that is like removed from all the kind of politics and garbage and BS that can happen within a sporting community, right? And like, to me, that's a beautiful thing. Like, the fact that the coach hit me up and was just like, what should I do about this player? The fact that, she even wanted to ask me that, I was honored, but also really, really scared, right? Because like, I was just a GA. It's a huge decision for you to trust a GA with. Why are you on the phone with me right now? Like, what the heck is going on, man? But it's like, that's the cool part about this job, is that like, you don't have to worry about all those pressures that you're talking about, Rowan. Like, I don't have to worry about that stuff, man. I'm just worried about you feeling good. You doing okay? Awesome, man. Like, let's get after it. Give me what you got today, right? You're not doing okay? You have some time to talk, man? Like, whether it's just venting or if I can help you out, like, let me do that. That's super, super cool. And that's something that's unique about D3. So I don't have to worry about the price tag on you guys, right? I don't have to worry about there being a financial value tied to you. You miss training sessions at a D1 college, your scholarship is up, man. Like, there's only a certain amount of training things that you can miss, a certain amount of strikes until your scholarship is taken away, right? And that's so hard, because like, sometimes that scholarship, man, is the only thing that has them in school. And and for me, the person that I had to make the decision on, she was not going back to a place that was good for her. Like, she was not going back to a healthy environment whatsoever back in her hometown. And luckily, she got her shit together and is doing well and is back in school now. But dude, man, until she sent me that Instagram message, I worried about that person every day, and it's like, I don't want to make those decisions. Like, I don't want to be a part of athletics in that way. And Division III allows me to separate from that. And being a strength and conditioning professional, even at the Division I level, is about as separate as you can get from things like that. You know what I mean? And even being like, just support staff like an AT, like you get to get away from that a little bit, which is why these jobs are so attractive,
Drop the mic. That was that was beautiful.
No, man, I'm very, like I said in the beginning, man, it's passion, dude. And if you don't care about people, it's the wrong field for you, man. Like, find something else to do. Find something else you think you're good at, man. But it's not this. If all you want is money and you don't want to actually affect and improve the well-being of the people that you serve, that's what it's really about. That's a cool thing about being in this field as a performance professional.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all dried up.
You always got something to say, Ant.
Take us home here. One last thing.
I don't know. I don't want to follow up with something that was that good.
It was really good.
I think I've talked to you about it. Like, it's good to feel that sense of belonging and like emotional connection with people.
Yeah.
Through something like so simple of like strength training,
Yeah.
even if it's like an hour session 3 times or 2 times a week. I don't know. You just get to build like a relationship that it's almost like a drug where like you need it back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's and I know I've told you this before, and Steven too, like, it's the reason why I haven't given you guys a single piece of strength and conditioning literature to read, right? Like, you got Conscious Coaching coming up this month for you to read, which is all about like finding out different archetypes of people and different types of athletes, what drives, what motivates them, how to get through to them. Steven is reading 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Because like those are the things that actually make your program work, because you have the ability to communicate it, get people on your side, address dysfunctions that may arise within that program, and then be able to identify what type of person this is, and from that type, how can I get through to them, right? And the things that really matter aren't the PRs and the KPIs that I've collected over the course of my career. It's the thank you cards and the pictures, and the Instagram posts, and we're gonna miss you. And I've been very fortunate, even though at some of those other stops like Waldorf and Merrimack, even though they're only about a year, I made some really, really meaningful relationships while I was there, and I have the thank you cards to prove it. And this is funny. I was never really a whistle guy before I came here, and then I realized I maybe should put on the whistle as I was sort of like wrapping up my time at Merrimack. I'm like, man, I'm gonna be one guy out there for a lot of big teams. Like, I may be a whistle guy, and the field hockey team there, which, shout out Merrimack field hockey, what's up? That was a very, very tearful goodbye when I had to leave them. And even from the seniors who knew the drill at Merrimack, where it's every year you're getting a new crop of graduate fellows to coach you, even for them it was hard. And that whistle that I wear during every single session is from them. And it says, a good coach or a great coach is hard to come by, but like you remember him forever. Something along those lines. And it says thank you on the other side. So it's stuff like that makes this job worth it. And you never do it for that. You never do it like, ooh boy, can't wait. can't wait for the sad Instagram posts and all the tears and stuff like that. But when it's handed to you, man, it's a undescribable feeling, man, and you just feel so humbled and so grateful that you were able to have that effect on somebody, and that's a drug that you keep coming back for, which is probably the best drug out there, helping people.
Yeah.
So
as far as I know, I don't know. I haven't tried many drugs, so.
Yeah. Whoa, we're in the
I haven't tried any
library.
drugs, sorry.
Hey, bud, we're in the POU library right now, all right? Keep it down.
I was talking about Advil. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but
some NSAIDs, dude. There we go. Shoot, boys. Well, thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah,
Thank you for being on. That was a really fun conversation.
Yeah. Our first ever coach on our podcast.
Yep.
There you go, boys. There you
We're
go.
hoping to have, or I've been trying to get in touch with, her name is Meg Strong on Instagram. Megan Young, she's the head strength coach for the Sounders.
Oh, nice.
But she was last year's NSCA Coach of the Year.
Oh, nice.
She's in Seattle, so I'm gonna see if
Yeah, man.
she hasn't responded to me, but
I got a couple tactical boys that I could hit up, and I'm sure a few of them wouldn't mind coming down and talking to you about some of the ones who've been there since I've been there, who can talk about like what it was really like in the beginning versus where it's at now, 2-3 years later. So, but yeah, man, no, thanks again. This is super fun. I enjoy talking with you guys, and enjoy stealing exercises from both of you. So keep that stuff coming, man. You guys are it's gonna be super cool to watch you all go do your thing whenever you end up leaving here. So
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
right on, boys.
All right.
All right.
It's a wrap.
That's it. We did it.